What happens when one of the most powerful politicians in the state walks into a courtroom expecting special treatment and gets publicly humiliated instead? A United States senator thought his position would save him from consequences. He was dead wrong. If you believe no one is above the law, smash that like button right now. You need to see what happened next. This is the story of Senator Marcus Pemberton, a 52-year-old career politician with 23 years in public office. He drove a midnight blue Lexus LS 500, wore custom-tailored Brioni suits, and had never heard the word no from anyone in a position of authority. Until the morning of September 14, 2023, when he stood before Judge Frank Caprio in Providence, Rhode Island, and everything he thought he knew about power collapsed around him. Drop a comment below telling us if you've ever witnessed someone with authority get what they deserved, because what you're about to hear will restore your faith in justice. It started 3 weeks earlier on a humid Tuesday evening. Senator Pemberton was driving through the Federal Hill neighborhood at 67 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. He wasn't rushing to an emergency. There was no urgent Senate business. He was simply late for a dinner reservation at Gracie's, an upscale restaurant where he was meeting campaign donors. Behind him, Officer Rita Gonzalez, a 34-year-old Providence police veteran with 11 years on the force, activated her lights. The senator didn't pull over immediately. He continued for 4 more blocks, rolled through 2 stop signs, and finally stopped in front of the restaurant. Officer Gonzalez approached his window with her body camera recording every second. Hit subscribe if you want more stories about powerful people facing real accountability. This gets so much better. "License and registration, please," Officer Gonzalez said calmly. Her voice was steady, professional. She had no idea who she had pulled over yet. Senator Pemberton lowered his window exactly 3 inches. "Do you know who I am?" Those 6 words. The same 6 words that have preceded downfall after downfall throughout history. The same words that would seal his fate in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. "I need your license and registration, sir." Officer Gonzalez didn't flinch. She had heard variations of this question before. The entitled businessman, the doctor's wife, the lawyer who quoted case law through his car window. She had heard them all, and she treated them all exactly the same. "I'm Senator Marcus Pemberton, United States Senate. I have immunity from traffic violations when conducting government business." He didn't hand over any documents. He simply stared at her, waiting for recognition, waiting for the apology, waiting for her to walk back to her cruiser and drive away. He had played this card 17 times before, in 3 different states. It had worked 17 times before. Share this video with anyone who thinks rich and powerful people play by different rules. They need to see this. Officer Gonzalez leaned down slightly to make eye contact through the narrow window opening. "Senator, you were traveling 67 in a 30. You ran 2 stop signs after I activated my lights. There is no immunity for traffic violations, and I need your license and registration now." The senator's jaw tightened. A small vein appeared on his left temple. Behind him, through the restaurant window, his dinner guests were watching. His campaign manager, Thomas Ashford, was already standing, phone in hand, ready to call whoever needed to be called to make this disappear. State Representative Jennifer Walsh sat with her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. And Martin Delacroix, a real estate developer who had donated $200,000 to Pemberton's last campaign, looked at his Rolex Daytona and frowned. "Officer Gonzalez, is it?" The senator had finally noticed her nameplate. "I'm going to give you one opportunity to reconsider this interaction. I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I have oversight of federal funding for police departments. I suggest you think very carefully about your next move." Quote, "Like this video if you believe police officers should enforce the law equally regardless of who they're dealing with. Officer Gonzalez is about to become your hero." What the senator didn't know was that Officer Gonzalez's younger brother, Danny, had been killed 3 years earlier by a drunk driver going 75 miles per hour through a residential neighborhood. The driver was a hedge fund manager who had hired expensive lawyers, claimed he was rushing to an emergency business meeting, and walked away with a suspended sentence and a fine he paid with pocket change. Danny Gonzalez was 22 years old. He had just graduated from Rhode Island College with a degree in elementary education. He was engaged to his high school sweetheart, Maria Torres. He never got to teach his first class. Officer Gonzalez had made a promise at her brother's funeral. No special treatment. Not ever. Not for anyone. Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time. License and registration. If you refuse, I will charge you with failure to comply, in addition to the speeding and stop sign violations. Quote, Senator Pemberton finally pulled out his wallet. He threw his license through the window gap so forcefully it bounced off Officer Gonzalez's chest and fell to the pavement. You've just ended your career. I hope that feels good. The body camera captured it all. The arrogant throw, the threat, the sneer on his face. Every single frame would later be played in court, dissected by local news stations, and go viral across social media platforms with over 37 million views. But that comes later. Right now, Officer Gonzalez simply picked up the license, walked back to her cruiser, and began writing 4 tickets. Drop a comment telling us about a time someone underestimated you, because this officer was about to teach a United States Senator a lesson he'd never forget. Inside the restaurant, Thomas Ashford was already on his 3rd phone call. He had called the Providence Police Chief, Marcus Reynolds, who didn't answer. He called the mayor's office and reached an assistant who promised to pass along the message. He called State Representative Walsh's chief of staff to coordinate messaging. Everything was being handled. This would disappear by morning. It always did. But Thomas Ashford didn't know about the body camera footage. He didn't know that Officer Gonzalez had already flagged the interaction for review because of the threats made by the senator. And he definitely didn't know about what had happened 2 hours before the senator's traffic stop. At 6:15 that same evening, across town in the Washington Park neighborhood, a silver Honda Civic ran a red light at the intersection of Broad Street and Elmwood Avenue. The car struck a minivan carrying the Morrison family. James Morrison, age 41, a high school chemistry teacher. His wife, Patricia Morrison, age 39, a nurse at Rhode Island Hospital. Their 3 children, Emma, age 12, Dylan, age 9, and Sophie, age 6. The impact sent the minivan spinning into a telephone pole. The Honda Civic fled the scene. By the time emergency responders arrived, 8-year-old Dylan was unconscious with a traumatic brain injury. Sophie had a fractured pelvis and internal bleeding. Patricia Morrison had compound fractures in both legs. James Morrison, who had seen the car running the light and tried to swerve, kept asking the paramedics if his children were okay, even as he was being treated for 3 broken ribs and a collapsed lung. Emma, the oldest, was physically unharmed but would later be diagnosed with severe PTSD from watching her siblings bleed in the back seat while waiting for help to arrive. Hit that subscribe button if you believe hit-and-run drivers deserve the harshest possible punishment, because you're not going to believe how this connects to Senator Pemberton. The Honda Civic was found abandoned in a parking garage 6 blocks from the accident scene. The registered owner was Marcus Pemberton, Jr., the senator's 26-year-old son. Jr., as everyone called him, had 3 previous DUI arrests, 2 dismissed through his father's connections, and 1 reduced to reckless driving with no jail time. He had been fired from 2 lobbying firms for showing up drunk. He had crashed his previous car, a BMW X5, into a restaurant patio while texting and driving. No charges were filed because the restaurant owner received a personal visit from the senator with a briefcase containing $50,000 in cash and a promise that any lawsuits would be met with legal warfare that would bankrupt the small business. Junior wasn't driving the Honda Civic that evening. At least, that's what the senator would later claim. The car had been stolen, he would say. They had been meaning to report it. An unfortunate coincidence. A tragic situation, but nothing to do with the Pemberton family. Except the car wasn't stolen. It had been loaned to State Representative Jennifer Walsh's nephew, Connor Walsh, a 24-year-old law school dropout with a cocaine habit and a trust fund. Connor was at dinner with them that night, sitting at the restaurant table, sweating through his Ralph Lauren Oxford shirt, drinking his 4th vodka soda, while across town the Morrison family was being loaded into ambulances. Share this with someone who needs to see that justice still exists. Because what happened next will give you chills. Officer Gonzalez walked back to the senator's window with 4 tickets totaling $1,800. Speeding, 2 stop signs, failure to comply. Sign here, please. Senator Pemberton grabbed the tickets, looked at the amount, and laughed. Actually laughed. You think this matters? I'll make a phone call and these disappear. But you're going to spend the rest of your life in uniform writing parking tickets in the worst neighborhoods of this city. I'll make sure of it. Quote. He signed with an aggressive scrawl, threw the pen back at Officer Gonzalez, and rolled up his window. Through the tinted glass, she could see him on his phone before he even started the engine. The Lexus pulled away smoothly, turned right, and parked in the restaurant's valet area. The senator walked inside, straightened his tie, and rejoined his table as if nothing had happened. Handled? Thomas Ashford asked quietly. Handled, the senator confirmed. He picked up his menu. Now, let's discuss the infrastructure bill and how our friends here can benefit from the highway expansions. Connor Walsh excused himself to the bathroom. His hands were shaking. He checked his phone obsessively. No news alerts yet. Maybe they hadn't found the car. Maybe the family was fine. Maybe he could just pretend tonight never happened. He snorted a line of cocaine off the back of his phone in the bathroom stall and returned to the table with dilated pupils and a forced smile. If you're still watching, drop a like right now. Because this story is about to take a turn that no one saw coming. The court date was set for September 14, 2023, at 10 in the morning. Municipal Traffic Court in Providence, Rhode Island. Judge Frank Caprio presiding. Judge Caprio was 77 years old, a local legend who had served on the bench for 38 years. He was known for 2 things: compassion for people struggling with genuine hardship, and absolute zero tolerance for arrogance, entitlement, and abuse of power. He had seen everyone in his courtroom: single mothers working 3 jobs who couldn't afford a parking ticket, elderly people on fixed incomes who would accidentally let their registration expire, teenagers who made stupid mistakes and needed a second chance. But he had also seen wealthy businessmen who treated traffic laws as suggestions. He had seen lawyers who tried to intimidate him with legal jargon. He had seen politicians who dropped names and made veiled threats. He treated the struggling with mercy. He treated the entitled with justice. Cold, unwavering public justice. Senator Pemberton arrived at the courthouse at 9:45. He was accompanied by his attorney, Richard Blackstone of Blackstone and Associates, a downtown law firm that charged $800 per hour and specialized in making problems disappear for Providence's elite. Blackstone carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Officer Gonzalez's monthly salary. His shoes were Italian. His watch was Swiss. His confidence was absolute. Comment below if you think expensive lawyers give people an unfair advantage. This judge is about to prove you wrong. They walked through the metal detectors, past the crowded waiting area full of ordinary people waiting for their own traffic hearings, and straight to the courtroom. Thomas Ashford was already there, sitting in the back row, monitoring everything. He had prepared a press release explaining that the senator had responsibly appeared in court to resolve a minor traffic matter and had been found not at fault due to unclear signage and faulty speed detection equipment. The release was ready to go out the moment the case was dismissed. What none of them knew was that Judge Caprio had already reviewed Officer Gonzalez's report. He had watched the body camera footage 3 times. He had read about the senator's previous traffic stops in other jurisdictions that had mysteriously disappeared from the record. And he had read the morning newspaper article about the Morrison family, still in the hospital, still fighting for recovery, while police searched for the driver of a silver Honda Civic registered to Marcus Pemberton, Jr. The judge had made some phone calls of his own. To the detective investigating the hit and run, to the hospital where the Morrison family was being treated, to the forensics team analyzing the Honda Civic, and to the state police, who had been quietly building a case but had been facing pressure from unnamed sources to slow down their investigation. Hit subscribe if you love judges who actually care about justice. You're about to see why Judge Caprio is legendary. At exactly 10 o'clock, the bailiff called the courtroom to order. All rise. The Honorable Judge Frank Caprio presiding. Judge Caprio entered and sat down. He was a small man, maybe 5'6", with white hair and kind eyes that could turn to steel in a heartbeat. He looked at the docket. Case number 2023, TF 8847. State of Rhode Island versus Marcus Pemberton. Approach the bench, please. Senator Pemberton and Attorney Blackstone walked forward. They stood at the defendant's table with the casual posture of men who knew this was a formality. The senator even had a slight smile on his face. He had been assured by 3 different people that this case would be dismissed before lunch. Judge Caprio looked at them over his reading glasses. Senator Pemberton, you're here today for speeding, running 2 stop signs, and failure to comply with a police officer's lawful orders. How do you plead? Quote, Attorney Blackstone stepped forward before the senator could speak. Your Honor, if I may, we're entering a plea of not guilty and moving for immediate dismissal. The speed detection equipment used that evening has not been calibrated in accordance with state regulations. The alleged stop sign violations occurred at intersections with obstructed signage. And the failure to comply charge is based on a misunderstanding between my client and an officer who failed to properly identify herself and the nature of the stop. Furthermore, Mr. Blackstone, Judge Caprio's voice was quiet, but it cut through the lawyer's speech like a knife. I've been on this bench for 38 years. I've heard every excuse, every technicality, and every creative interpretation of traffic law that exists. Would you like to know what I did before this hearing? Quote, share this video right now. This is the moment everything changes. Attorney Blackstone hesitated. Your Honor, quote, I watched the body camera footage. Twice. Would you like to know what I saw? Judge Caprio picked up a remote control and pressed a button. A screen descended from the ceiling behind him. The lights dimmed slightly. Let's watch it together, shall we? Quote. The courtroom went completely silent. In the back row, Thomas Ashford felt his stomach drop. This wasn't procedure. Judges didn't screen body camera footage in open court for traffic violations. Something was very wrong. The video began to play. There was Officer Gonzalez approaching the senator's window, her polite request for license and registration. The senator's window barely opening. And then, crystal clear through the audio system, the senator's voice, Do you know who I am? Quote. A murmur went through the courtroom. Someone in the gallery gasped. Judge Caprio held up his hand for silence. The video continued. The senator's claim of immunity. Officer Gonzalez's professional, measured responses. The senator's escalating threats. His statement about the Senate Judiciary Committee. His claim that he would end her career. And finally, him throwing his license at her with enough force to bounce it off her uniform. When the video ended, Judge Caprio turned off the screen and turned to face Senator Pemberton directly. The kindness was gone from his eyes now. What remained was 40 years of watching people abuse power and a determination to stop it whenever he could. Drop a like if you're feeling that justice is about to be served. Because you have no idea what the judge knows. Senator Pemberton, Judge Caprio said slowly, in my courtroom I see people every single day who are struggling. I see single mothers who drove with an expired registration because they had to choose between paying that fee or feeding their children. I see elderly people on Social Security who parked in the wrong spot because they couldn't afford their glaucoma medication and couldn't see the signs clearly. I see young people who made a mistake and are terrified of the consequences that could derail their entire future. He paused and leaned forward. Do you know what I do for those people, Senator? Quote. The senator said nothing. His lawyer stood frozen beside him. I show them mercy. I reduce their fines. I give them payment plans. I suspend penalties. Sometimes I dismiss cases entirely. Because they're human beings who made honest mistakes while dealing with circumstances beyond their control. They come into my courtroom with humility and respect, and I treat them with the same. Judge Caprio's voice grew harder. But you, Senator, came into my courtroom thinking your position would protect you. You stood there with that smirk on your face believing this was a joke, a formality, something your expensive lawyer would make disappear. So let me be very clear about what's going to happen today. Quote, If you believe powerful people need to be held accountable, comment justice right now. This judge is not holding back. Motion to dismiss is denied. The body camera footage shows clear violations of traffic law and threats made against a police officer performing her duties. You will pay the full fine of $1,800. Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the State Ethics Commission for investigation into your claim of immunity and your threats against Officer Gonzalez. And I'm ordering you to complete 40 hours of community service at the Rhode Island Hospital Emergency Room, where you will see firsthand the consequences of reckless driving. The courtroom erupted. Senator Pemberton's face went from confused to red to white in the span of 5 seconds. Attorney Blackstone sputtered, "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We intend to appeal immediately. The community service requirement exceeds your authority for a traffic violation." "Then appeal, Mr. Blackstone." I'm sure the appellate judges will enjoy watching that body camera footage as much as I did. In fact, I'm entering it into the public record right now, so every news station in Rhode Island can broadcast the senator's words about ending the career of a police officer who had the audacity to enforce the law equally. Thomas Ashford was already standing, phone to his ear, trying to get ahead of the story. But 3 local news reporters were already in the courtroom, live tweeting the proceedings. By the time he reached the hallway to make his calls, Senator Pemberton was already trending on regional social media. Hit that subscribe button because this story gets even more intense. The judge isn't done yet. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished. "There's one more matter we need to discuss, Senator. Would you like to tell me about the silver Honda Civic registered to your son? The one involved in a hit and run 2 hours before Officer Gonzalez pulled you over? The one that sent 3 children to the hospital?" Quote, the color drained completely from Senator Pemberton's face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Attorney Blackstone grabbed his arm, whispered urgently in his ear. "Your Honor," Blackstone said loudly, "my client has no knowledge of any hit-and-run incident, and any questions about that matter should be directed through proper criminal investigation channels, not in a traffic court hearing." "You're absolutely right, Mr. Blackstone," Judge Caprio agreed. "Which is why Detective Sarah Chen from the Rhode Island State Police is waiting in my chambers with a warrant for Connor Walsh's arrest. Mr. Walsh, would you please stand up?" Quote, in the back of the courtroom, Connor Walsh, who had been sitting quietly next to Thomas Ashford hoping to remain invisible, felt his entire body go numb. Every head in the courtroom turned to look at him. He stood on shaking legs as 2 state police officers emerged from the side door and walked toward him. Share this video with everyone. This moment needs to be seen by millions. "Connor Walsh, you're under arrest for hit and run causing serious bodily injury, leaving the scene of an accident, reckless driving, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent." The detective's words faded into a buzzing sound in Connor's ears as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Senator Pemberton spun around to watch the arrest. His carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time, in front of witnesses, in a public courtroom, recorded by cameras, broadcast by news stations. Everything he had built for 23 years was crumbling because of his arrogance, his son's mistakes, and his belief that power placed him above consequences. Judge Caprio's voice cut through the chaos. "Senator Pemberton, face forward, please. We're not done." Quote, the senator slowly turned back around. He looked 10 years older than he had 15 minutes ago. "I want you to understand something," Judge Caprio continued. "Officer Rita Gonzalez's brother, Danny, was killed by a reckless driver 3 years ago. A driver who got special treatment because he had money and connections. She has dedicated her career to making sure that never happens again. She was doing her job when she pulled you over. She was protecting every person who uses those streets. She was honoring her brother's memory by enforcing the law equally, without fear or favor, and you threatened to destroy her career for it." Quote, Judge Caprio stood up. He was a small man, standing over a powerful senator, but in that moment he seemed like a giant. Comment below if you think Judge Caprio is a hero, because what he says next will stay with you forever. The Morrison family is still in the hospital, Senator. Dylan Morrison, 9 years old, is in a medically induced coma because of swelling on his brain. Sophie Morrison, 6 years old, had surgery yesterday to repair her fractured pelvis and stop internal bleeding. Patricia Morrison will need months of physical therapy to walk again. James Morrison keeps asking doctors when his children can come home, even though he can barely breathe through his own injuries. Emma Morrison can't sleep because every time she closes her eyes, she sees her siblings bleeding. The judge's voice dropped to almost a whisper, but every word echoed in the silent courtroom. Do you know what their father does for a living, Senator? He's a chemistry teacher at Hope High School. Do you know what their mother does? She's a nurse. She helps people. She saves lives. And right now, she can't even stand up because someone driving your son's car decided that traffic laws don't apply to them exactly the same way you decided traffic laws don't apply to you. Senator Pemberton's hands were shaking. A thin sheen of sweat had appeared on his forehead. For the first time in perhaps decades, he had no power, no phone call that could fix this, no connection that could make it disappear. He was just a man standing before justice, and justice was not impressed by his title. I want you to spend your 40 hours of community service in that hospital emergency room, Senator. I want you to see what happens when people drive recklessly through neighborhoods. I want you to meet families like the Morrisons. And I want you to think about Officer Gonzalez every single day, and the oath she took to serve and protect everyone equally, including entitled politicians who think they're above the law. Hit that like button if you believe Judge Caprio just delivered the most powerful speech you've heard all year. We're not even halfway through this story. Judge Caprio sat back down. Your fines are due within 30 days. Your community service must be completed within 90 days. If you fail to comply, I'll hold you in contempt of court, and you'll spend the next 60 days in the adult correctional institution explaining to your constituents why a United States Senator is in jail for contempt. Do you understand these terms? Quote, Yes, Your Honor, Senator Pemberton whispered. It was the first time he'd spoken since the video had been played. His voice was small, hollow, nothing like the commanding tone he used on the Senate floor. Bailiff, next case. Judge Caprio picked up the next file as if he had just resolved a routine traffic violation instead of publicly dismantling one of the most powerful men in Rhode Island. Senator Pemberton and Attorney Blackstone walked out of the courtroom in silence. The gallery erupted in whispers the moment they left. News reporters rushed out to file stories. Someone had recorded the entire proceedings on their phone, and by that afternoon, the video had been viewed 4 million times. By the next morning, it had been picked up by national news networks. By the end of the week, it had become one of the most watched courtroom videos in Internet history. But the story doesn't end there. It gets so much better, and so much worse, depending on who you were. Drop a comment telling us if you think the senator will actually complete his community service or try to weasel out of it. Because what happened during those 40 hours changed everything. Senator Pemberton's first day at Rhode Island Hospital's emergency room was September 21st, exactly 1 week after his court appearance. He arrived at 6 in the morning, wearing not his usual Brioni suit, but jeans and a plain blue shirt as instructed. He was assigned to Dr. Michael Chen, the ER director, who had been briefed by the hospital administration about their unusual volunteer. Senator, Dr. Chen said without any particular warmth or respect, "You're going to follow me. You're going to watch. You're going to listen. You're not going to talk unless I ask you a direct question. You're going to see what we deal with every single day in this emergency room, and maybe you'll understand why traffic laws exist. Let's go." Quote, the first patient they saw was a 17-year-old kid named Marcus Brown, who had been hit by a car while crossing the street on his way to work at a grocery store. Broken leg, fractured arm, severe road rash across his back and shoulders. The car hadn't stopped. The driver was never found. Marcus was trying not to cry as nurses cleaned his wounds. His mother, Cheryl Brown, sat beside him holding his hand, her face streaked with tears. "He's a good kid," she kept saying. "He works. He goes to school. He's never been in trouble. Why would someone just leave him there?" Quote, share this with someone who believes in karma. The senator is about to face consequences he never imagined. Dr. Chen made Senator Pemberton stand there and watch the entire treatment. The cleaning of the road rash, which made Marcus scream despite pain medication. The setting of the broken bones. The X-rays. The discussion about how Marcus would miss at least 6 weeks of school and work, putting his family's already tight finances into crisis. Cheryl Brown worked 2 jobs as a home health aide, barely making ends meet. Marcus's grocery store job provided just enough extra income to help with bills. Without it, they would be behind on rent by October. "Do you have anything to say to this family, Senator?" Dr. Chen asked coldly. Senator Pemberton looked at Marcus and Cheryl Brown. He opened his mouth, closed it, finally managed, "I'm sorry this happened to you." Cheryl Brown looked at him with tired eyes. "Are you the senator, the one from the video?" News of his courtroom humiliation had reached everywhere. Everyone knew. "Yes, ma'am," Pemberton admitted quietly. "Are you sorry you got caught, or sorry for what you did?" It was a simple question, but it hit harder than any of Judge Caprio's words had. The senator had no answer. Dr. Chen moved him along to the next patient. "If you're still watching this, drop a like, because we're about to get to the moment that changed Senator Pemberton's life forever." The next 8 hours were a parade of human suffering caused by reckless driving. A woman with a traumatic brain injury from being rear-ended by a drunk driver. A teenager who would never walk again because someone ran a red light and T-boned his car. A mother who lost her infant daughter when a speeding driver crashed into their parked car while she was loading groceries. Senator Pemberton watched it all. He held basins while people vomited from concussions. He stood silently as families received devastating news. He saw Dr. Chen work with skill and compassion on patient after patient, never judging, never lecturing, just trying to save lives and reduce suffering. At 2 in the afternoon, Dr. Chen took him to a different floor. "There's someone I want you to meet, Senator." They walked to the pediatric intensive care unit, past colorful murals of cartoon characters, past a playroom that sat empty, to room 428, where a 9-year-old boy named Dylan Morrison lay in a hospital bed, still unconscious, monitors beeping steadily, tubes and wires connecting his small body to machines that were keeping him alive. His mother, Patricia Morrison, sat in a wheelchair beside the bed, her legs in casts, holding her son's hand. His father, James Morrison, sat on the other side, dark circles under his eyes, his torso wrapped in bandages from his broken ribs. "Comment, Justice, if you think the senator needed to see this, because this moment broke him." "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison," Dr. Chen said gently, "I'm sorry to disturb you. This is Senator Marcus Pemberton. He's completing community service ordered by Judge Caprio. I thought it was important for him to meet your family." James Morrison looked up slowly. Recognition flickered across his exhausted face. He had seen the viral video. Everyone had. He stood up carefully, wincing from the pain in his ribs. Senator Pemberton expected anger. He expected to be yelled at, cursed at, thrown out of the room. He deserved all of it. But James Morrison just looked at him for a long moment and then said, "Do you have children, Senator?" Quote, "Yes," Pemberton answered quietly. "A son, Marcus Jr., he's 26. Then you understand what it's like to love someone so much that you do anything to protect them. You understand what it's like to have hope and dreams for their future. You understand what it feels like to watch them grow up and become who they're meant to be." The senator nodded, unable to speak. "Dylan wants to be a marine biologist," James Morrison continued. His voice was steady, but tears were streaming down his face. "He's obsessed with octopuses. He watches documentaries. He reads everything he can find. He volunteers at the aquarium downtown every Saturday. He's only 9 years old, and he already knows exactly what he wants to do with his life. Do you know how rare that is?" Quote, "Hit subscribe if this is breaking your heart, because it's about to get even more emotional. The doctors say he might wake up. They say he might be fine. Or he might have permanent brain damage. He might need to relearn how to walk, how to talk, how to feed himself. We won't know until he wakes up. If he wakes up. And every single day, I sit here and I wonder if the person who did this to him has any idea what they've taken from him. From us. From the world, because Dylan was going to do amazing things." Senator Pemberton felt tears running down his own face. "Mr. Morrison, The car that hit us was registered to your son," James Morrison said. "Detective Chen told us. They arrested someone named Connor Walsh. A friend of your family. He was driving your son's car. I didn't know, the senator said. I swear to you, I didn't know. But you knew your son had DUIs. You knew he was reckless. You knew he had hurt people before, and you made it go away. You used your power to protect him from consequences, and that taught him that consequences don't exist. So he lent his car to his friend, who was just as reckless, just as entitled, and my son is in a coma. Share this video if you believe parents who protect their children from consequences are part of the problem. This father's words are powerful. Patricia Morrison spoke for the first time. Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. Our daughter Sophie is in room 431. She's 6. She had surgery on her pelvis. She cries every time she wakes up because it hurts, and she doesn't understand why this happened to her. She keeps asking if Dylan is okay, and we have to lie to her because we can't put her through the fear of not knowing if her brother will ever wake up. My oldest, Emma, is home with my sister, James Morrison added. She won't come to the hospital. She can't. She has panic attacks every time we mention it. She saw everything. She saw Dylan unconscious. She saw Sophie screaming. She saw her mother bleeding. She saw me unable to breathe. She's 12 years old, and she's in therapy twice a week now because a man decided that getting where he wanted to go was more important than human life. Dr. Chen put a hand on Senator Pemberton's shoulder. This is what reckless driving does, Senator. This is what happens when people like you think rules don't apply to them. You teach others that rules don't matter. You create a culture of entitlement, and families like the Morrisons pay the price. The senator stood there staring at Dylan Morrison's unconscious form, at the machines breathing for him, at his parents who hadn't left his side in weeks, and something inside him that had been hard and defensive and arrogant for decades finally cracked open. Like this video if you believe people can change. Because what Senator Pemberton did next shocked everyone. He came back the next day, and the day after that, and every single day for the next 6 weeks. He completed his 40 hours of court-ordered community service in the first week, but he kept showing up. He shadowed drive Chen in the emergency room. He listened to stories of victims of reckless driving. He met families destroyed by people who thought traffic laws were suggestions. And every afternoon, he would go to room 428 and sit with James and Patricia Morrison. At first, they barely acknowledged him. But slowly, over days and weeks, they began to talk. About Dylan's love of octopuses, about Sophie's obsession with dinosaurs, about Emma's talent for drawing, about their life before the accident, when their biggest worry was whether they could afford a family vacation to Cape Cod that summer. Senator Pemberton told them about his own son, about Marcus Jr.'s struggles with addiction, about the times he had called in favors to make criminal charges disappear, about how he had convinced himself he was protecting his son, but had really been protecting himself from the embarrassment of having a troubled child, about how he had valued his political image more than teaching his son accountability. Drop a comment about whether you believe in forgiveness and redemption, because the Morrison family had to make an impossible choice. On October 18th, 34 days after the accident, Dylan Morrison woke up. His eyes opened slowly, confused, frightened. He tried to pull out his breathing tube. Nurses rushed in. James and Patricia were sobbing, holding his hands, telling him he was safe, that they were there, that everything would be okay. Senator Pemberton was in the room when it happened. He had been reading to Dylan from a book about deep-sea creatures, something James Morrison had asked him to do because doctors said that familiar voices and stories might help. When Dylan's eyes opened, the senator backed away immediately, giving the family space, but James Morrison grabbed his arm. "Stay! You've been here every day. You should see this." Over the next week, they learned that Dylan had been incredibly lucky. No permanent brain damage. His motor skills were intact. His memory was functioning. He would need physical therapy and occupational therapy, but the doctors were optimistic about a full recovery. It was, they said, nothing short of miraculous. Sophie was discharged a week later. Emma was slowly beginning to heal, though the psychological scars would take much longer. Patricia Morrison was learning to walk again, with the help of physical therapists. James Morrison was able to return to teaching part-time. The family was putting their lives back together, piece by painful piece. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in miracles and second chances. Because this story is about to come full circle. Connor Walsh pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 7 years in prison. He stood in court and apologized to the Morrison family. He cried. He expressed genuine remorse. But his apology couldn't undo the trauma. His tears couldn't erase the months of pain. He was 24 years old, and he would spend the next 7 years in a cell because he had been driving recklessly while high on cocaine in a car he shouldn't have been driving, in a life he had never been held accountable for. Marcus Pemberton, Jr. entered a 30-day inpatient rehabilitation program for alcohol and substance abuse. He had been enabling Connor Walsh's drug use. He had lent him the car knowing Connor didn't have a valid license. He cooperated fully with investigators and avoided criminal charges by the narrowest margin, but only because he genuinely hadn't known about the accident until police showed up at his apartment. For the first time in his life, Junior had a father who didn't make excuses for him. Senator Pemberton visited him in rehab and told him the truth. Quote, "I failed you. I taught you that consequences were for other people. I'm sorry. And that ends now. You're going to complete this program. You're going to get sober. You're going to rebuild your life the right way. And I'm going to support you, but I'm never going to protect you from consequences again." Share this with anyone who struggled with addiction or watched a loved one struggle. Recovery is possible, but accountability has to come first. On November 30th, 2023, Senator Marcus Pemberton held a press conference, not at his office, not at the State House, at the Rhode Island hospital, in the same emergency room where he had completed his community service. Standing beside him were James and Patricia Morrison, and in a wheelchair, with a shy smile on his face, was Dylan Morrison, who had been discharged from the hospital 3 days earlier. 3 months ago, Senator Pemberton began, his voice steady but emotional. "I stood in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom and had my entire worldview shattered. I was arrogant. I was entitled. I believed my position placed me above the laws that govern everyone else. I threatened a police officer for doing her job. I thought I could make it all disappear with phone calls and connections. I was wrong. Completely wrong. And I'm grateful that Judge Caprio had the courage to hold me accountable." The reporters in the room were silent, cameras rolling, recording what would become another viral moment from this extraordinary case. "I want to publicly apologize to Officer Rita Gonzalez. She was honoring her brother's memory by enforcing the law equally, and I tried to intimidate her for it. She is the kind of officer every community deserves. I also want to apologize to this court system, to Judge Caprio, and to every person who has ever been victimized by someone who thought power placed them above consequences. Like this video if you respect someone who can admit they were wrong." Because Senator Pemberton wasn't finished. But most importantly, I want to talk about the Morrison family. 3 months ago, a car registered to my son was involved in a hit-and-run accident that nearly killed 3 children. The driver, Connor Walsh, is now in prison. But I have spent the last 3 months visiting this emergency room every single day, and I've learned something that should have been obvious but somehow wasn't. Every single person who comes through these doors is someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's father. They all matter. Their lives have value, and traffic laws exist to protect them. He paused and looked at Dylan Morrison. This young man wants to be a marine biologist. He's 9 years old, and he already knows what he wants to contribute to this world. The accident almost took that away from him, from all of us. Because Dylan isn't just the Morrison family's son. He's a student who will teach us about the ocean. He's a future scientist who will help us understand our planet. He's a person who matters, and someone almost destroyed his future because driving recklessly seemed more convenient than driving safely. Patricia Morrison wiped tears from her eyes. James Morrison stood with his hand on his son's shoulder. "I'm announcing today that I'm introducing federal legislation to close immunity loopholes that allow elected officials to avoid traffic enforcement. I'm establishing the Dylan Morrison Foundation to provide financial assistance to families affected by reckless driving while they navigate medical bills and lost income. And I'm committing 50% of my Senate salary for the next 6 years to fund trauma counseling for children who witness or experience traffic violence." Quote, "Comment, respect if you think the senator is finally doing the right thing. because there's one more thing he has to address. I'm also announcing that I will not be seeking re-election. My time in public service has been defined by using power to protect myself and people connected to me. That needs to end. I need to step back and figure out how to be a better father, a better person, and maybe eventually find a way to serve the public that's about helping people instead of helping myself." Quote, the press conference lasted another 45 minutes. Reporters asked tough questions. Senator Pemberton answered all of them with a humility that seemed genuine and hard-earned. James Morrison spoke about forgiveness, about how they had watched the senator show up every single day and had seen his transformation. Patricia Morrison talked about how anger and bitterness wouldn't heal her children, but actions that prevented other families from suffering might. And Dylan Morrison, when a reporter asked him what he wanted to say to Senator Pemberton, said simply, "I'm glad you learned. I hope other people learn too, and I hope no one else gets hurt." The video of that press conference was viewed 23 million times in the first week. Major news networks did segments on accountability and redemption. Think pieces were written about privilege, justice, and transformation. Judge Frank Caprio was interviewed by national media and became a symbol of judicial integrity. Officer Rita Gonzalez received letters of support from police officers across the country and a commendation from the Providence Police Department. Hit subscribe because we're almost at the end of this incredible story, and you need to hear what happened next. 6 months later, in May of 2024, the Dylan Morrison Foundation had raised over $3 million. It had helped 17 families pay medical bills related to reckless driving incidents. It had funded therapy for 32 children suffering from PTSD after traffic accidents. It had lobbied successfully for stricter penalties for hit-and-run drivers in Rhode Island. Senator Marcus Pemberton completed his term in the Senate but declined to run for re-election as promised. He spent most of his time working with the foundation and speaking at high schools about accountability, privilege, and the real consequences of reckless driving. His son, Marcus Jr., completed rehab and had been sober for 8 months. They were rebuilding their relationship slowly, honestly, without the enabling patterns that had defined it for decades. Officer Rita Gonzalez was promoted to sergeant. She continued to enforce traffic laws with the same professionalism she had always shown, and she established a training program for new officers on how to handle intimidation and threats from powerful individuals. Her brother Danny's memory was honored with a scholarship for students pursuing careers in education, and the Morrison family? They were healing. Dylan returned to school part-time in January. He still had headaches sometimes, and loud noises still made him anxious, but he was laughing again. He was playing with his siblings again. He had returned to his Saturday volunteering at the aquarium, where he gave tours and talked about octopuses with the same enthusiasm he had before the accident. Sophie's physical scars were fading. Emma was in therapy and slowly regaining her confidence. James and Patricia were walking together again, literally and figuratively, rebuilding their life one day at a time. Share this video with everyone you know. Stories like this remind us that justice, accountability, and redemption are still possible. On September 14, 2024, exactly 1 year after Senator Pemberton's courtroom appearance before Judge Caprio, the Morrison family and the senator met at the courthouse. Not for legal proceedings this time, but for a ceremony. Judge Caprio was presenting Officer Rita Gonzalez with the Rhode Island Bar Association's Award for Outstanding Commitment to Justice. They all gathered in the same courtroom where everything had changed. Judge Caprio gave a speech about courage, about enforcing the law without fear or favor, about the importance of treating every person with dignity regardless of their position or power. Officer Gonzalez accepted her award with grace and humility, dedicating it to her brother Danny and to every officer who faces pressure to give special treatment to powerful people. After the ceremony, Senator Pemberton approached Officer Gonzalez. "I owe you an apology that's a year overdue," he said. "What I said to you that night was inexcusable. You were doing your job with professionalism and integrity, and I tried to intimidate you. I'm sorry." Officer Gonzalez looked at him for a long moment. "Do you remember what you said to me? You said I'd spend the rest of my life in uniform writing parking tickets. You said you'd make sure of it." Quote, "I remember," the senator said quietly, "and I was completely wrong." Drop a like if you think Officer Gonzalez deserved this moment. Her response will give you chills. You were wrong, Officer Gonzalez agreed. But you know what? I would have been proud to spend my whole career in uniform. I would have been proud to write parking tickets if that's what kept people safe. Because this job isn't about recognition or rank or impressing powerful people. It's about service. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. It's about making sure my brother didn't die for nothing. She extended her hand. I accept your apology, Senator, and I appreciate the work you've done with the foundation. My brother would have appreciated it too. Quote, they shook hands. In that moment, in that courtroom, genuine redemption met genuine forgiveness. It wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. It was hard-earned through months of action, accountability, and change. Judge Caprio watched from the bench with a satisfied smile. This was what justice was supposed to look like. Not just punishment, not just humiliation, but transformation, growth, people becoming better than they were, systems working the way they were designed to work, with accountability for all and mercy for those who genuinely changed. Comment below telling us what you learned from this story, because the lessons here are powerful and important. As everyone left the courthouse that day, Dylan Morrison walked up to Senator Pemberton. He was holding a book, one of his beloved octopus encyclopedias. Mr. Pemberton, I wanted you to have this. You read to me when I was asleep. My dad told me. I thought maybe you'd want to know more about octopuses. The senator accepted the book with shaking hands. Thank you, Dylan. I'd be honored. Did you know octopuses have 3 hearts? Dylan asked, with the enthusiasm that only a 9-year-old expert can muster. I didn't know that, the senator admitted. Yeah. 2 pump blood to the gills and 1 pumps it to the rest of the body. I think people should have 3 hearts too. 1 for family, 1 for friends, and 1 for strangers. Then maybe we'd all care more about everyone. Out of the mouths of children. A 9-year-old boy who had nearly died because of someone's reckless decision was now teaching a former United States senator about compassion, about caring for strangers, about the interconnectedness of human life. If you've made it this far, hit that subscribe button, share this video. Because stories like this need to be told and retold until everyone understands that no one is above the law, that accountability matters, and that redemption is possible for those willing to do the hard work of genuine change. The story of Senator Marcus Pemberton and Judge Frank Caprio became one of the most discussed courtroom cases in modern memory. It was studied in law schools as an example of judicial independence. It was used in ethics classes as a case study in accountability and redemption. It was shared millions of times across social media as proof that justice still exists. But more than any of that, it became a reminder that power unchecked leads to abuse, that arrogance breeds entitlement, and that sometimes the most important thing a judge can do is treat everyone exactly the same. Whether you're a single mother struggling to pay a parking ticket or a United States senator who thinks traffic laws don't apply to you, in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, justice is blind to everything except the truth. Drop one final comment telling us, do you believe people in power should be held to higher standards or the same standards as everyone else? This is an important question, and we want to hear your thoughts. Officer Rita Gonzalez continues to serve the Providence community with distinction. She thinks of her brother Danny every single day, and she knows he would be proud of the officer she's become. She never gave special treatment to the senator that night. She never backed down from his threats. She did her job exactly the way it's supposed to be done, and in doing so, she changed not just one man's life, but created ripples that affected thousands. Judge Frank Caprio remains on the bench, treating every person who enters his courtroom with fairness and humanity. He shows mercy to those who need it, and accountability to those who deserve it. His courtroom has become a symbol of what justice should look like. Firm but compassionate, strict but understanding, powerful but humble. The Morrison family continues to heal and rebuild. They have good days and hard days, but they're together, and they're moving forward. Dylan is back at the aquarium every Saturday. Sophie is playing soccer again. Emma is drawing portraits of her family, beautiful images of people she loves who survived something terrible. James and Patricia look at their children every day and feel grateful for second chances. And Senator Marcus Pemberton? He's no longer in the Senate, but he's finally serving the public in a way that matters. The Dylan Morrison Foundation continues to grow and help families. He speaks to young people about accountability. He visits schools and talks honestly about his failures and what he learned. He's a better father to Marcus Jr., who is now 14 months sober and working as a counselor at a rehab facility, helping other people find the recovery that saved his life. Like this video one more time if this story moved you, and subscribe to this channel for more stories about justice, accountability, and the power of ordinary people standing up to extraordinary circumstances. The viral video of Senator Pemberton's courtroom humiliation has been viewed over 73 million times. It's been parodied, analyzed, discussed, and shared across every social media platform. But the real story isn't the viral moment. It's what happened after. It's the transformation. It's the work. It's the genuine change that came from hitting rock bottom and choosing to climb back up the right way. This is the story of how a traffic stop became a national conversation about privilege and accountability. How a judge's refusal to give special treatment became a lesson in judicial integrity. How a police officer's courage in the face of intimidation became an inspiration to law enforcement everywhere. How a senator's arrogance became an opportunity for redemption. And how a 9-year-old boy's resilience reminded us all what really matters. Share this video right now with the person who most needs to hear this message. We all know someone who thinks rules don't apply to them. We all know someone who uses their position to avoid consequences. Send them this story. Maybe it will change something. Maybe it will plant a seed. Maybe it will remind them that accountability isn't punishment. It's the foundation of a just society. And if you're someone who's made mistakes, who's abused power, who's hurt others through arrogance or entitlement, this story is for you too. Redemption is possible. Change is possible. But it requires genuine humility, consistent action, and a willingness to be uncomfortable while you rebuild who you are. Senator Pemberton did it. You can too. Thank you for watching this incredible story. Make sure you're subscribed because we have more stories like this coming. Stories about justice, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about systems working the way they should, and about the power of accountability to change lives. Drop a final comment below with the word accountability if you believe that's what our society needs more of. We'll see you in the next video, where we explore another case of someone who thought they were above the law and learned otherwise. Justice exists. Sometimes you just have to wait for it to catch up.